Friends, today's NRI Samay program from Los Angeles brought to you commercial-free by listeners like you. Your generous donations make possible for us to stay commercial-free, and today's show is pre-recorded. If you have a question for the guest, please send an email to nrisamay@gmail.com. We will follow up with the guest and find the answer for you. Thank you for your support.
Friends, this is Srihari, your host for today's show. We are going to talk with Atishi today. She is part of Aam Aadmi Party. We'll focus on two main things. One is about how Aam Aadmi Party created the manifestos. As we know, each constituency has a manifesto from Aam Aadmi Party. Probably this is unprecedented at this extent. Then we'll also talk about how Aam Aadmi Party is creating policies. How are they inclusive when they create the policies? Atishi ji, welcome to NRI.
Hi. Hi. Thank you, Sri.
Thank you. I know you guys, everybody in Aam Aadmi Party and also maybe other parties also working very hard for these elections. Yes. And I know you are working very late also. So I really appreciate taking time and spending this time with us.
No, you're most welcome. We are always glad if people want to know about our party, the manifesto, what we stand for. Okay, so excellent. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you very much. So to begin with, could you please give some background on how you are involved in Aam Aadmi Party and how did you contribute before? I think you are part of Anna Hazare movement as well, right?
No, actually I wasn't part of the Anna Hazare movement. I think I have been part of a much larger group of people in the country who have been involved in various kinds of activism. And at the time of the Anna Hazare movement, I was working with a group of friends in a village about 25 kilometers outside Bhopal. And working there, I think we were increasingly finding that maybe some interventions are needed on a much larger scale. Interventions at the level of policy, interventions at the level of much larger social mobilization. Now, interventions like this haven't happened in India for the past 20, 30 years. And many of us who have been into activism have also seen the last 10 years, the last 20 years, as I would say, a low phase in terms of where a lot of policies have changed, things have actually become more difficult for the Aam Aadmi, for the farmer, for people who are street vendors, and for the common people in general. And yet, somehow people were not rising up against it, people were not managing to mobilize on a large scale. So when the Anna Hazare movement happened, it was of course a matter of interest to see this kind of mobilization and to see that the movement captured the imagination of the people. But while I was sympathetic, I was also slightly skeptical. I was also skeptical because one realized that corruption is not a standalone issue, that corruption is linked to many other issues. And one also wondered whether just the introduction of one law would, the Jan Lokpal bill, would be successful in eradicating corruption. So I think at that point of time, one was watching from the outside, definitely sympathetic because corruption is a serious issue. But I think as the movement progressed, and especially as the movement started talking far more about Swaraj, about decentralization, and eventually formed a political party, was the stage at which I personally got more interested in it. Because a political party takes up far more issues than just one single movement. A political party takes a stand on multiple issues. And I think the turning point was actually the Bijli Pani Andolan that happened about 6 months ago, because that was the stage where the party really took up what were the issues of the Aam Aadmi.
I'm sorry, what was the Andolan again?
The Bijli Pani Andolan.
Right, yeah, exactly. Okay, go ahead.
So, yes.
Okay.
So I have now been involved in the party, I think, for about the past 8-9 months, I had some involvement even a little before the formation of the party, but I have been involved almost full time for the past 8-9 months.
Okay. Then you said you were part of larger groups before entering into Aam Aadmi Party. Could you tell at a very high level what are these groups and what?
No, I was not talking about any specific groups, but more in the sense that of a larger set of people who have had many of these concerns and felt that the past 2 decades have not, 1 or 2 decades have not seen much movement on this front.
I see. Excellent. So let's talk about the manifestos because that's, I think you were involved in the creation of these manifestos, right? Could you tell?
Yes.
Could you give some background about how you were involved, and then we can discuss more.
Well, I had got involved with the policy formulation exercise of the party that began in January 2013, where we had formed about 31 committees with people who had some academic backgrounds, experts, activists, to help us evolve policies on many issues. Because, as I mentioned, the party came out of a single issue movement, but a political party needs to have a stand on a multiplicity of issues that affect the common person. And for that we invited more than 100, actually closer to 150 people from outside the party to give us their ideas, suggestions on various policy issues. And I had got involved in that part of Aam Aadmi Party's work from about January of last year. And so the manifestos work in that sense flowed out of that policy exercise.
I'm sorry, from this year, right? January of this
year?
Yes,
January 2013.
Okay, yeah. You said last year, so I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So the manifesto itself, I think the Aam Aadmi Party's manifesto is in many ways, it has in many ways been a unique exercise. Unique exercise in the sense that manifestos, I mean, there are 2-3 things about manifestos in general. First of all, manifestos are written in closed rooms. I mean, a group of 5-7 people from one political party sits down and writes manifestos. I think what is unique about the process by which the Aam Aadmi Party manifesto has been created, that it's a manifesto that has come from the people. It's not just for the people, it's actually from the people. Because we were having a lot of Jan Sabhas across Delhi for the past 6-8 months, and our party workers and volunteers were meeting people. We also had many meetings to create the constituency manifestos, where we would ask people what their grievances are. And what was interesting was that several issues emerged in constituency after constituency. And everyone would say electricity prices are too high, we don't have enough water, government schools don't work, government hospitals don't work, we can't afford private schools, we don't have sewage connections. So these 5-6 issues that emerged from the constituencies are actually the issues we therefore decided to focus our manifesto on. So we didn't decide in some ways what we would talk about. It was that came from the people themselves. So that, I think, was one unique and I think for all of us a very insightful process to see what the issues of the common person actually are.
Yeah.
On the second count, I think the Aam Aadmi Party's manifesto is different from what other political parties do, is that when manifestos are written, no one takes them seriously. Not the person who writes them, not the person who reads them. And I think this is something that we wanted to change. So one of the things that we have talked about is that, because as you know, we do talk about accountability, transparency in governance. So what we have talked about is that we would open a special cell in the Chief Minister's office to ensure that all of these promises are fulfilled. And every year the cell would give a kind of report card, would present an audit report of how far we have reached on each of these promises. Therefore, if you notice in the manifesto, each promise is numbered. like within a section 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, so that on each point we can say this is how much we have managed to achieve. Similarly, a similar audit report would be brought about by each MLA for their constituency manifesto. So once a year, they would present a report to the people in their constituency about how far they have achieved their promises on their constituency manifestos.
Friends, NRI Samay is a non-profit independent alternate media from Los Angeles, USA, which brings positive stories from grassroots activists from all corners of India and across the world. If you have any interesting episode you would like NRI Samay to cover, we will be happy to do so. NRI Samay would also like to encourage amateur journalists who have a flair for highlighting current events. You can be part of our citizen journalist team. You could cover an important event, interview victims of an atrocity, or document an inspirational story. The idea is to have a mix of experience throughout all parts of the world, preferably supported by an audio or a video clip of your story to be aired, which will be the curtain raiser. You can also submit your opinion articles on important topics to NRI Samay. We will be happy to put it on nrisamay.com in the opinion section. All your work will be credited only to you. And if you're interested, please send an email to nrisamay@gmail.com.
I see. So, so you are saying people in Jan Sabhas, they came, they participated and they said, this is what we want and this is what we want, right? So something like that. That's pretty much...
Yeah, actually, not as much as this is what we want. I think that is where we understood what the real problems of the people are. I mean, it is via these Jan Sabhas that we were able to understand the pulse of the city. Because I think if you have to understand Delhi, you have to understand Delhi is very different for different people. If you live in Lutyens, Delhi, then you have a very different picture of Delhi. If you live in Najafgarh, you have a very different picture of Delhi. If you live in Badarpur, you have a very different picture of Delhi. So via these Jan Sabhas, because we actually went out to each of these places, we got to know what was the issues that affected the people of that area the most.
I see. So it's more like your understanding, and then you put together the manifestos,
yes.
right? Not so much of...
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so the next step after that was actually that once we did understand their issues, another step involved, and again I cannot say that whether this happens in other political parties or not, because we don't know necessarily what happens inside there. So it would not be fair to say that they have not done it. But in our case, I do know that after we understood the issues that we were going to tackle, a fair amount of research went into each of those issues. And understanding what are the issues involved, we went through a large variety of government reports on those issues. We went through a large number of reports prepared by NGOs and various other organizations, be it on the issue of water, be it on the issue of sanitation. And we consulted a large number of people who are working on those issues. For example, in Delhi, there is something called a Right to Education Forum. So we met with them and had a discussion about what they thought should be the demands or the issues, the sort of solutions that should be presented in the education section of our manifesto. So then a serious research component went in. We had a team of about 7-8 young volunteers who went into the depths of many of these subjects. And we had a series of presentations before the manifesto committee of the party. And then based on those presentations, we evolved our policy position on those issues.
I see. So initially the Janasabhas gave the inputs on what are the potential problems and solutions.
Yeah.
Then you went and met with experts. Then you made presentations and then gave it to the manifesto committee.
Yes. And then, of course, see, many promises are always political. There is a promise that if, for example, there is, one says that the education system doesn't work. So we could have gone in two directions. We could have said that we would promote private schools in the city. Or we could have said that we will improve the government school system. So then we made a political, so then the choice, once you have identified the problem, then you have to make a political choice. And we took the choice in favor of improving the public school system, the public healthcare system, because otherwise one cannot provide equitable access to all sections of society. When one supports just the private sector in terms of health and education particularly, then what happens is that gradually people from the poorer sections of society don't get access to good quality education and healthcare.
Right, absolutely. That's a very good point. Then you identify the problem and you know what needs to be solved, but the path you take might be different from what another party might take, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting because if you see in the BJP manifesto, they have talked about insurance. They have talked about providing insurance to all citizens. And this is something we also considered and we talked about it. But eventually our stand was that in the long run there is no substitute for improving the public healthcare system. Because one has, see, a lot about politics is also about priorities. There is a certain budget. Now a government can only spend that much of its portion on healthcare. So either you can provide it in insurance, which goes into the private healthcare system, or you can spend that money into improving the public healthcare system. So this was a choice we had. And therefore we made our choice that we would want to improve the public healthcare system, and that is what will provide a long-term solution.
I see. So the insurance, when you say insurance, is it, are you aware of how it is implemented in Andhra Pradesh, for example?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, something like that has been, although to be honest, I have only read the highlights of the BJP manifesto. But from what I can gather is that is what they are talking about as implemented in Andhra Pradesh.
I see. So then now is that the path, what you mentioned, is that the choice between improving the public versus private? Is who makes that decision? Is it the manifesto committee or is it even higher above? Is it the ideology of the party itself?
In the sense, what happens is that the manifesto committee also had senior members of the party, and eventually the manifesto and what was possible positions it can take also went to the political affairs committee, which is in some ways the highest decision-making body in the party. And therefore, some of those decisions are made there as well.
I see. So then what happens? You go and give the presentation to this manifesto committee, then they decide what should go into which manifesto of this constituency, and then what is the priority?
For example, the constituency manifestos are not, actually the central manifesto is the process that in some ways that I have been referring to, which involved the research and presentations. The constituency manifesto process has been more at the level of the Jan Sabhas, and what we have presented is basically not as much 100% ready solutions, but it's a charter of grievances where we have committed to addressing a series of issues. So we have not necessarily said that these are the solutions or these are the specific ways by which we shall solve these problems.
Yes.
But what we have made is a commitment to solve the grievances listed by the people.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a perfect manifesto. You just identify the issues and make a promise that you will resolve. For example, if the drainage is clogging, it doesn't matter which method you use, right? As long as it works.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that is also in line with the idea of Swaraj that we talk about. That it's not as if that someone else would decide for you. On local issues, people themselves will have to decide about how they want to solve their problems. And since we are talking about devolution of untied funds to localities, to mohallas, therefore we also believe that many of these problems will be solved in that process. But we have made a commitment that whoever is our MLA would ensure that these issues get addressed.
Friends, NRI Samay is a non-profit independent alternate media from Los Angeles, USA, which brings positive stories from grassroots activists from all corners of India and across the world. Among others, we focus on stories of need for equality, inspiration, environment, health, and politics. NRI Samay does not rely on corporate funding, and thus our shows are commercial free. We only rely on your donations. Please consider donating to NRI Samay, and all donations are kept transparent on nrisamay.com.
Right. And you mentioned that there is a cell which keeps track of all these items. Then
Yes.
also you talked about the idea of Swaraj. The way I understand is people are the one who prioritize, right? So things might change after 6 months or a year. So you think some of these things will get dropped and maybe new things will get added, something like that?
Well, definitely see what are the issues that we have talked about in the central manifesto. In fact, interestingly, we have not called our manifesto Ghoshna Patra. We have called our manifesto Sankalp Patra, which means that it's our resolve that we would do all this.
Yeah.
And so therefore the issues or the various sankalps that we have made in the central manifesto, those are not something that we would go back upon. Those are commitments that have been made. Although, for example, I would add a slight caveat that if there is something that does come up, which shows that some particular thing is completely unfeasible or it would have some consequences, then we would present that also to the people.
Yeah.
Because if there are some concerns, and we feel, so one is not going to implement a policy just because one thinks कि अब तो एक बारी लिख दिया, it has gone on to paper. So if there are some concerns, then we will present that to the people as well. And then maybe ask people for alternative suggestions about how it can be handled. But the commitment, the political commitment to ensuring solutions to those problems definitely remains. But on the whole, I don't think that we are likely to go back on any of these promises, because they have also been promised with some amount of thought. So I really don't think that is something likely to happen.
Right.
But in case it does, in case it does, it will also be handled in a transparent manner.
Yeah, the things that you mentioned, the central issues which are like Bijli Pani or security of women or the Jan Lokpal bill or Lokpal bill, these are things that, I mean, those are the signature issues that Aam Aadmi Party has taken up. So I don't think you will go back on those. But at a constituency level, so it's up to people what should be or how it should be prioritized, right?
Absolutely, yes. And for example, people can also decide that we want to do this in the first year, and this is something else is not a priority. So we can think of handling that next year.
Okay.
So that is something that the decisions that can be taken by the people themselves.
Okay, excellent. So you are pretty confident about all the manifestos of all these 70 constituencies that they are practical and they are objective and you can deliver on all these things.
Actually, well, so I'm not sure what something like the word practical means, but these are the problems of the people.
Right.
There are problems and there is garbage on their streets. There is a problem that the sewage connections don't work. There is a problem that government schools don't work.
Right, but what I meant is if an MLA is saying these are the things that I want to solve, but they should be in his control, his or her control, right? If they're not in his or her control, then they are not practical. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Actually, there are some things that might have to be centrally handled as well from the level of the Delhi government. But if we do come into power, then the MLA can also get support from the Delhi government, because there might be some things which need to be managed at the policy level as well.
I see.
So the Delhi government would also therefore have a role in fulfilling the promises of the various constituencies.
Absolutely. Let's switch to how the policy is made within Aam Aadmi Party, and if you could tell one or two examples, that would be great. Is there a policy committee who sits down and say, you know what, this is our policy on nuclear power, or this is our policy on FDI, things like that?
Okay, that's a good question actually. As I said that in January of 2013, we started a policy formulation exercise for the party. They set up about 31 committees, which had members largely from outside the party, which consisted of academics, activists, experts, who gave their suggestions on a wide variety of social, economic, governance, ecological cultural, foreign policy, on a wide range of issues. Our intention has been that we would make the document that has come out of that public, and we would ask for people's feedback on those issues before finalizing the party's policy perspective. And that exercise is still due. It's just that in the past 4 months, we have been completely caught up with the Delhi elections, and this national level policy perspective has not emerged from the party. But a lot of the discussions that happened within those policy committees have informed the process of our manifesto formation, which is in some ways excuse me, the first policy document that has come out of the Aam Aadmi Party. And so for the manifesto, as I mentioned, we had one manifesto committee, which consisted of some members, some senior members of the party, and some volunteers who were helping in the research. And the issues were brought to that committee, and within that committee, various discussions were had about what could be the best solution. Now, the thing is that I don't necessarily, often policies are made from an ideological perspective. That first you decide your ideology, and then you decide your policy. Whereas we have approached it from the other perspective. Okay, we will first look at what are the concrete issues of the people, and then based on that try and find a solution. So therefore, in some ways, we have inverted what can be called a traditional way of policy formation. And we hope to do that in the future also. Because I think the time is now past for us to move beyond the ideologies of the left and the right and try and find more flexible solutions, solutions that suit our times, solutions that are most appropriate for the common person.
Okay, but
so
yes. Suppose you said it's not complete yet, but suppose you are done in next 6 months or so, or 4 months, and you put you list all your policies on all the various issues, then you don't think somebody will come and say this is a left or a right ideological policies?
Well, I think in some ways it is possible. For example, anyone can label us in any way they want. But there are certain classic positions that the left takes and certain classic positions that the right takes. And I think that what we are likely to have is probably a somewhat eclectic mix of the two.
Okay. So can you maybe
but of course, for example, but it's not just that. I think when we put out our policy document, an important step that lies in between is the fact that once a policy document is created, we shall also put that out in the public domain for people to give suggestions and feedback before we actually finalize the document. So that in some way also represents our policy position, that we believe in participation, that we believe in a participatory democracy.
Right. But you don't think, I mean, given, if we look at the top leaders of Aam Aadmi Party and how they responded in past maybe a decade, you know, do you think...
could you just repeat that?
Yeah, I was saying, if suppose if you take, because Aam Aadmi Party doesn't have a lot of history, right? It's a new party.
Yes.
So maybe we can look at the history of the top leaders of Aam Aadmi Party and say, you know what...
that may not be the most appropriate way of looking at the situation, because I think even in the top leadership, you have a variety of trends coming, variety of political thoughts and ideas coming together. And I think it would be more appropriate to look at it, I think, by first of all looking at the Delhi manifesto, because that is in some ways the first policy document that has come out of the Aam Aadmi Party, and I think that actually represents our process of policy making. That we have taken up concrete issues of the people and tried to find solutions to them.
But,
for example, one thing...
These 4 or 5 top issues that you have taken up, these are not debatable, right? These are pretty, one can say they are easy. I mean, you want to provide protection for women, which whether right wing or left wing, it's very agreeable. Or if you are finding inconsistencies in the billing, and you want to reduce the, provide the benefit to the people. Those are not debatable. Those are pretty easy, straightforward things.
No, but for example, as I said in the case of electricity, we have said that we would. We have not said that we would roll back privatization. What we have instead said is that we would introduce competition between discoms to ensure that the prices on an ongoing level remain low. One of the problems currently with electricity in Delhi is that you have private monopolies. And therefore, we believe that that is one of the reasons that has led to this hike in prices in electricity. So in one place, we have said we are not going to roll back the privatization of the electricity. But on the other hand, we have said that we will not privatize the Delhi Jal Board. So I think that in that sense, there is no fixed sort of ideological stance in that manner, which you can say that, okay, Aam Aadmi Party is anti-privatization. Because we have, depending on the circumstance, taken two different positions. And in this case, we have taken two different positions because we feel that in electricity there have been some benefits of privatization. There has been a substantial reduction of T&D losses. There has been electricity supply has now reached almost to about 100% of the residents in Delhi. But we do feel that private monopolies, there is a serious problem with that. So we have, in fact, we have actually introduced the best market practice of competition. We have suggested that the introduction of that into electricity supply. But on the other hand, in the case of water, we feel that internationally the experience of water privatization has been one where water, which is a basic human necessity, has gone out of the access of the poorest people in society. And in so many countries where water has been privatized, people had to make a choice between sending their children to school or buying water. So I think that therefore we decided that we would stand against the privatization of water supply. So as you see that we didn't take a kind of fixed position beforehand that we oppose all kinds of privatization.
Okay, excellent.
We sort of have decided on a case-to-case basis depending on what works there.
Friends, NRI Samay is a non-profit independent alternate media from Los Angeles, USA, which brings positive stories from grassroots activists from all corners of India and across the world. NRI Samay does not rely on corporate funding and our shows are commercial free. We only rely on your donations. Corporate funded media is driven by the TRP rating and profits are blurring the distinction between news and entertainment. Why do our news channels talk so much about cricket, movies, accidents, popular figures' personal lives, babies of heroines, gossips, etc., while they should be covering the struggles of people, inequality in our society, rural issues, and border security issues? Why did our media raise some corruption crusaders to the sky on one day and shut them off completely when graft charges were raised on those corporate sponsors? Media relies so much on the corporate funding and government blessings that they cannot report independently. NRI Samay is different. We don't accept funds from any corporations and hence our shows are commercial free. We completely rely on donations from you. Please consider donating to NRI Samay and please go to nrisamay.com and donate generously. This is the only way together that we can continue NRI Samay. All donations are kept transparent on nrisamay.com. And if you have any questions, please write to nrisamay@gmail.com.
Okay, excellent. That's very good. I know you haven't, you don't have policy on each and every issue out there, but I'll ask you few, maybe if you can tell whether there is a policy or not yet, and if there is, what is it? Could you tell the policy on nuclear power? Is Aam Aadmi Party ever going to support it or not support it?
Actually, I think it would be a bit inappropriate for me to take a policy, whatever, because right now many of these things are being discussed internally within the party.
Okay, so although, it's not decided, right? That's okay.
It's not decided.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what about the...
So while there has been some discussion, as I said, we have not had we have been so caught up in the Delhi election
Right.
that we have not had time for the kind of internal debate that is needed to finalize a policy position.
Absolutely. What about the FDI? The reason I ask is...
No, FDI is a fair question actually, because FDI and retail is a position that we have taken in our manifesto in Delhi. So that is obviously something we have come to a conclusion on. In the Delhi manifesto, we have said that the Delhi government will not allow FDI in retail. And that is an issue we have discussed in detail. And we felt, and the reason we have taken this position is because the retail sector provides a large employment, provides quite a lot of employment in a city like Delhi. It provides for those who are traders, shopkeepers, and a large number of people who are employed in shops. So our understanding was that by bringing in FDI in retail in Delhi, one is actually rolling back employment for a large number of people. And in times where unemployment is becoming a serious question, it was felt that we should not be introducing any policies that actually have the potential of reducing employment. But overall on FDI, we have taken the stand that we would actually decide on a case-to-case basis. Depending on which sector we are talking about, to what degree we are talking about. We have not taken a stand that we will not allow FDI in any sector. That we will decide on a case-to-case basis, depending on the concrete implications in that sector.
I see, got it. So insurance could be something else, or health insurance could be something else, and army could be something else, and so forth, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, that could be something else, and that is something that we need to think about and give more thought to.
Okay, great. And what about, for example, security for Food Security Act or something like that? Would Aam Aadmi Party support?
Well, we have said in our, the Food Security Act, one has to look at it in two ways. One is the fact that you have to provide a basic minimum for people who are literally on the verge of starvation. There are people who are malnourished. 75% women and children in rural areas in India today are malnourished. So some kind of basic security, food security needs to be provided. But I think our position has been, and this also if you see draws from the idea of Swaraj, that in the long run, one cannot have people who are dependent constantly on the government to provide for them. So I think the sort of policies that need to be introduced are policies that can bring about economic Swaraj, that can make people economically dependent. And that would be what our long-term focus would be. That the need for this kind of social security, be it the food security bill, be it 10 REGS, etc., the need for that goes away over time. Currently, there is a need for all these forms of social security is because the kind of policies that we have currently are actually putting the common people of our country in far more insecure economic conditions. When people are put in such insecure economic conditions, one has to give them social security. But in the long run, I think this model where policies throw people out of access to jobs, to employment, etc., and then you provide them social security is not a desirable one. I think that in the long run, one needs to have policies that would make people self-sufficient. And that is the sort of direction we would want to take. But yes, in the short run, till that actually happens, one has to take care of the people in the country.
So you mentioned about 75...
And yes, for example, in our own manifesto, we have talked about ration, and we have said that we would actually ensure that the cash transfer scheme that has been started by the Delhi government is reversed. And not just wheat and rice is given in the public distribution system, but also other important, other nutritious items like pulses, like oils. So we have said that we would expand the scope of the public distribution.
So you are saying no for cash transfer, but yes for food security, right?
Yes, we are saying yes in the short run.
And no for
because cash transfers, yes, definitely not for food security. because then cash transfers may or may not actually be used for ensuring food security. Cash transfers, and often these cash transfers, if you know, happen in the names of the men of the family.
Yeah.
And this is the classic problem of how the money that comes may be spent by the man of the house on alcohol, not anything else. And the woman,
maybe
sorry?
Somebody can argue that alcohol is food also. I'm just kidding.
Yes, but that food is only available to one member of the family.
Yeah.
So yes, we don't, in food security, we do not stand for cash transfers.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned 75% of rural kids and women are malnutrition, and even the Congress party put the Food Security Act. I think it's going to cover 66% of entire India. Do you think that's a good approach to cover 66% of entire India, giving guaranteed food?
Actually, this is a very difficult question to answer because if I say 66%, someone will say, why not 100%? If someone says 100%, then one will say that, oh, but that's too expensive. I think in the long run, we will have to change our approach to economic policy. One cannot have policies that keep disenfranchising people and providing them access to basic employment, basic facilities, and on the other hand, saying, should we have food security for 60% or 100% people? I think in the long run, you will have to ensure that your policies provide employment to people. You will have to ensure that access to healthcare, to education is provided. And that is the direction which can yield more long-term solutions.
Absolutely. And I'll take just 2 more minutes. You mentioned about FDI in retail. You already know what's the policy. Are there any concrete policies that are already decided that you can share with us?
Would you want to ask on any specific issue? Yeah, for example, our policy on environmental issues. This is something that a specific segment of people has always been asking us about environmental concerns and about whether we will take a stand on that or not. And I think that, again, I keep coming back to the Delhi manifesto because that is our first document that has been put out into the public domain. But if you do go through the document, you will definitely see what can we call a green strand running through it. And that strand is not just that we are not saying everyone may have a section on environment in their manifesto. But if you go through the document, go through our document, you will find that not just as a separate sort of compartment, which everyone of course ignores eventually, our approach has been to look at many of these questions from an ecological perspective as well. So for example, when we talk about electricity, we have talked about incentives and subsidies for solar energy and talking about a target for about 20% of Delhi's electricity to be provided by solar energy in the next 10 years. And the provision for people who install solar panels to actually sell surplus electricity to the grid. In terms of water in the long, if you see, we have talked about free water for those who consume under 700 liters. So that is an important step for water conservation. We have talked about long-term citywide rainwater harvesting and reviving the water sources in Delhi. Even in sewage treatment, etc., we have talked about more ecologically sustainable and decentralized methods of sewage treatment. So our approach is not just that our policies will sort of continue to harm the environment and we will also have some policies to take care of the environment. Yeah. Our approach has been that our solutions need to be environmentally sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
maybe a much broader question.
Yes.
If you can put it just to summarize, what do you think from Aam Aadmi perspective, what is the role of the government?
From the perspective of the Aam Aadmi, what is the role of the government?
Yeah.
Actually, this question has often been asked. Do you believe in
party? Sorry.
No,
From
absolutely.
Yeah. Of your party. Yeah.
Yeah. This question has often been asked that do you want to believe in big government or small government? Is a question that has often been asked. I think that there are many areas in which our current administrative, bureaucratic governance structure needs to be seriously cut down and seriously simplified. Because in those areas, we are still working with a colonial administrative system that was not designed to be transparent, that was not designed to be accountable.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase my question. Not so much of big or small, but from a common man perspective, what do you think he wants from the government?
What does the common man want from the government?
Yeah.
That is a question you might have to ask from the common man itself.
No, from your perspective, I mean, you understand as a party, right? You understand the common man that you are trying to serve. So from your perspective, what is your understanding of what people want from the government?
I think people want two or three things from the government. I think people want accountability, transparency, and honesty. That is one thing that people want from governments. They want responsiveness from the government. Currently, one of the big crises that people feel with the government is that they have no access to it. They have no rights to make any decisions that affect their lives. So what they want from the government, number one, is a say in it, a say in decisions that affect their lives. That is number one. Number two, what people want from the government is transparency, honesty, accountability. That if the government says it's going to do something, how do we know it's going to happen? How does it remain accountable to us? That is what something people want from the government. And number three, a large section of people want from the government a basic ensuring of adequate facilities, basic facilities like education, like healthcare, like water supply, sanitation, and public transport. This is what people want from the government. And unfortunately, most of our governments have not been able to deliver on many of these counts.
Great. That is excellent. Before we wrap up, is there any message you would like to give to our listeners? They are both in different parts of the world and also in India.
Absolutely. I think the message that I would want to give to people is that the experiment that the Aam Aadmi Party is, and it's so far an experiment, would not have happened without the support and involvement of a wide variety of people coming from very diverse backgrounds, even from different parts of the world. We have had enormous support from NRIs, even in this Delhi campaign actually. So I think, so my message would be that I think we should all put in all our best efforts in trying to change this country and improve things for the better. It can be through the Aam Aadmi Party, it can be through various other means. But I think we need to think beyond just our individual lives and our jobs. We need to think about the world we live in, and we need to think about what kind of world we are leaving to our children and take action for that, for making it a better place.
Excellent. I really thank you for all the inputs that you provided, and we wish you success in the coming elections.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shri. Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, if you liked today's show, please go to youtube.com/NRI Samay and click on the subscribe button. You will get notified every time we publish a new show. And you can also like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Twitter and Google+.